The cowboy had been searching for a nanny for his baby for 6 months. Apache woman, now I am here. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the rolling hills, casting long golden shadows across the wide, dusty ranch. Jack, a rugged cowboy with strong hands and a face weathered by the sun, sat on the edge of the porch of his small wooden house, watching the horizon. He held a small, worn photograph in his hand, a picture of his late wife smiling, holding their tiny baby girl, Emily. The photograph had been with him for years, and though the edges were frayed, he could not bring himself to part with it. He sighed deeply, his chest feeling heavy with exhaustion and worry. For 6 long months, Jack had been searching for a nanny for Emily, his precious little girl. After his wife's sudden death, everything had fallen on him. He had to tend the ranch, take care of the livestock, fix fences, ride out to check the cattle, and somehow manage to care for Emily. The baby was only a year old, and though she was full of life and energy, she required constant attention. Jack had never imagined raising a child on his own. The responsibility weighed heavily on him, especially since he had never been alone with a child before. Jack had interviewed woman after woman over the months. Some were kind but timid, afraid of the open ranch land or the animals that roamed freely. Others were strict and cold, expecting Emily to obey without understanding the child's needs. He even tried asking neighbors and friends for recommendations, but no one seemed right. Some nannies could handle city life, but none were prepared for the rough, dusty life of a cowboy's ranch. And some could care for Emily, but had no experience with the animals, which was just as important. Every time a promising candidate left, he felt both relief and disappointment. Relief because another day of worry had passed, but disappointment because he still had not found the right person. He rubbed his tired eyes and glanced at Emily, who was sitting in her small wooden crib near the window, playing with the colorful rattle. Her tiny hands shook it happily, and she giggled as the small bells jingled inside. The sound made Jack smile despite the burden on his heart. Emily's laughter was pure and innocent, untouched by the sadness that had recently filled their lives, but even as he smiled, he felt a pang of guilt. He knew he could not give her everything she needed. He could teach her about horses, cattle, and the ranch, but he could not give her the comfort and warmth of a mother's touch every day. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards and the soft rustle of wind through the nearby trees. Jack's mind wandered back to the interviews he had conducted. He remembered a tall woman with kind eyes who could not handle the heat of the day. He remembered another woman who seemed strict and professional but did not understand how to soothe a crying baby. He even remembered a young girl who wanted the job badly but became frightened when a horse neighed loudly outside. Each one had been a disappointment, leaving Jack more anxious with every passing day. Jack's life had become a careful balance between the ranch work and taking care of Emily. He had learned to wake before dawn, feed the animals, milk the cows. He changed diapers, rocked Emily to sleep, and sang soft lullabies even though he had never considered himself a singer. He kept a routine, hoping it would give Emily a sense of stability, but the nights were the hardest. Emily would wake, sometimes crying for hours, and Jack would be up with her, rocking her gently, whispering words of comfort he sometimes did not even feel himself. He remembered one particular night when a thunderstorm rolled across the hills. The wind howled and the rain beat against the wooden roof.
Emily had cried incessantly, frightened by the loud noises. Jack had held her close, his own heart pounding with worry.
He whispered stories about the stars and the sun, anything to distract her. He realized in that moment just how small and fragile she was in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. That night, he promised himself that he would find someone who could help him, someone strong yet gentle, someone who could provide the care Emily needed while he tended the ranch. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Jack's hope began to fade. Each failed attempt to find a nanny chipped away at his patience and confidence. He began to wonder if anyone could truly care for Emily the way she deserved. His friends tried to reassure him, telling him that the right person would come along eventually, but he could not shake the feeling that time was running out. Emily was growing, learning, and changing every day, and he worried that he could not give her the experiences and guidance she needed on his own. Jack often found himself staring at the horizon in the late afternoons, wondering if someone, anyone, would answer his silent prayers. He thought about the qualities he wanted in a nanny, someone patient, loving, strong, and wise. He wanted someone who could understand Emily's needs without being told, someone who could teach her about life while keeping her safe in the unpredictable world of the ranch. He knew that finding such a person would not be easy, but he refused to give up. He had to keep searching, for Emily's sake and for his own. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jack noticed movement along the dusty trail leading to the ranch. A figure was walking steadily toward the house, carrying only a small bundle. Jack squinted, trying to make out who it could be. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be another hopeful candidate? Or someone lost, seeking shelter from the approaching night? He felt the mix of curiosity and caution. The months of disappointment had taught him not to get his hopes up too quickly. The figure drew closer, and Jack could see that it was a woman. She walked with confidence, her posture straight and strong, and there was a calmness about her that seemed unusual in this quiet, dusty landscape. Her eyes were focused, yet gentle, and when she saw Jack standing on the porch, she nodded politely. "I am here," she said simply, her voice soft but steady. Those words, so plain yet so full of meaning, struck Jack in a way he did not expect. Jack's first reaction was skepticism. He had heard so many promises before, only to be let down. But there was something about this woman that felt different. She did not seem desperate or nervous. She did not make excuses or try to sell herself with words. She simply stated a fact. She was here. And for the first time in 6 months, Jack felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the person he had been searching for. Perhaps this was the answer to his prayers, the helper Emily so desperately needed. As the woman approached the porch, Jack noticed her hands. They were strong and capable, yet gentle. He noticed the calm in her gaze, a quiet wisdom that seemed to promise safety and understanding. He did not know her name yet, nor did he know where she had come from, but there was an unmistakable sense that she belonged here. Emily, sensing something too, reached out her tiny hand toward the woman, letting out a small giggle. Jack's heart swelled. The baby had accepted her immediately, without hesitation, without fear. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past 6 months begin to lift just a little. Perhaps this time would be different. Perhaps Emily would finally have the care and attention she deserved. Perhaps he, too, could find a measure of relief and peace in knowing that someone strong and kind would be by their side. He stepped forward, ready to greet her properly, feeling a cautious optimism that he had not felt in a long time. That evening, as the sun set completely behind the hills, Jack, Emily, and the new woman, whose name he would soon learn was Ayana, stood together on the porch. The ranch was quiet, but for the first time in months, there was a sense of calm and hope in the air. Jack did not know what the future held, but he knew one thing. Perhaps, just perhaps, their lives were about to change for the better. And as he watched Emily laugh and reach for Ayanana, he felt a tiny spark of joy he had not felt in a long, long time. The next morning dawned bright and clear over the ranch. Sunlight streamed through the wooden windows, illuminating the simple rooms of Jack's house. Emily had awakened early, as she often did, and was already sitting in her crib, playing with a small wooden toy she had discovered the day before. Jack rubbed his eyes and yawned, feeling the lingering weight of the previous night. Despite the long hours he had spent worrying, he felt a small spark of hope, something he had not felt in a long time. Ayana, the woman who had arrived the previous evening, was still in the kitchen, quietly preparing a small breakfast for them both. Her movements were calm and purposeful, and there was a sense of quiet authority about her that Jack found reassuring. Jack watched as she worked. She moved with care and attention, chopping vegetables and heating water over the small stove. There was something in the way she carried herself that suggested she was no stranger to hard work, yet she handled it all with ease and grace. For a moment, Jack allowed himself to believe that perhaps this time things would be different. He walked over to the kitchen, careful not to disturb the fragile calm, and cleared his throat. "Good morning," he said, trying to sound casual, though his voice carried a mixture of curiosity and caution. Ayana looked up, her dark eyes meeting his with a steady gaze. "Good morning," she replied simply, her voice calm and even. She gestured toward the small table in the corner. "Breakfast is ready. Emily will like it." Jack glanced toward his daughter, who was now reaching out for Ayana with a giggle. The sight warmed his heart. He had been desperate for help, and already there was a sense of connection forming between Emily and this stranger. Over the next few hours, Jack observed Ayana carefully. She fed Emily, changed her diaper, and played with her, all with a patience and gentleness he had rarely seen. She sang soft songs in a language he did not recognize, but the melody was soothing, and Emily responded immediately, clapping her tiny hands and giggling. Jack felt a knot in his chest begin to loosen. For the first time in months, he could breathe a little easier, knowing that Emily was in capable and caring hands. Curiosity began to take hold, and Jack finally asked, "Where did you learn to care for children like this?" Ayana paused for a moment, considering her words. "In my community," she said finally. "We learn to care for the young and the old. It is part of life. We watch, we help, we teach, and we protect." Jack nodded slowly, realizing that her experience was not just in childcare, but in life itself. She had a wisdom that went beyond the lessons of a book or the training of a classroom. Days turned into weeks, and Ayana proved herself in ways Jack had not anticipated. She helped with the chores, teaching him better ways to manage the animals and repair fences. She guided Emily through small lessons, teaching her to notice the birds in the yard, the shapes of the clouds, and the sound of the wind through the trees. Jack was amazed at how quickly Emily responded to her. She learned to recognize different animals by name, to repeat simple words, and even to understand basic instructions. It was a joy to watch, and Jack felt a sense of relief he had not known in months. But Ayana's presence did more than help with chores and lessons. She brought a sense of calm to the household. Where Jack had felt tension and worry, there was now a quiet order. Emily seemed happier and more secure, and Jack himself found his own stress easing. There was something about her presence that made the long, dusty days of the ranch feel less overwhelming. She did not demand recognition or praise, but quietly performed her tasks, allowing life to move forward with a gentle rhythm. One afternoon, Jack watched as Ayana took Emily outside to the yard. The little girl toddled beside her, laughing as she chased after a small butterfly. Ayana guided her gently, holding her hand and showing her the different plants and flowers growing around the ranch. "See the colors?" she asked softly, pointing to a cluster of bright yellow flowers. Emily clapped her hands and repeated the word yellow with delight. Jack stood on the porch, watching this simple scene, and felt a warmth in his chest. He had tried to give Emily a full life on his own, but it was clear now that Ayana was providing something he could not, the gentle guidance and nurturing that only someone with experience and wisdom could offer. Over time, Jack began to open up to Ayana in ways he had not expected. He told her stories of his wife, of how much he missed her and how difficult life had been since she passed. He shared his worries about Emily's future, his fears of not being enough, and the loneliness that often accompanied his days. Ayana listened without judgment, offering gentle words of encouragement when needed. She did not try to solve every problem, but her calm presence helped him see things more clearly, and her insights often guided him toward solutions he had not considered. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Jack and Ayana sat together on the porch, Emily asleep inside. The ranch was quiet except for the distant calls of birds settling for the night. Jack spoke softly, almost to himself. "I wasn't sure anyone could help me. I've been so tired. So worried I didn't think it was possible to find someone I could trust." Ayana looked at him, her eyes steady and kind. "Trust is not given all at once," she said. "It is earned over time, through actions, not words. You have earned it by caring for Emily every day, and I have come to help, not to judge. That is why I am here." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He realized that he had been carrying so much weight alone, fearing failure at every turn. But Ayana was not just a helper. She was someone who understood the life of the ranch, the challenges of raising a child, and the struggles of carrying grief while still moving forward. Her arrival did not erase the difficulties, but it made them easier to face. It made Jack feel that he was no longer alone in his journey. As the weeks went by, Ayana's influence on Emily became more evident. The little girl began to develop a routine, waking up with a smile, responding to gentle instructions, and showing curiosity about the world around her. She learned simple words and phrases, played games, and laughed freely without fear. Jack noticed a change in himself as well. He found he had more patience, more energy, and more joy. The home that had once felt heavy with sorrow and worry now carried a quiet, steady warmth. Jack also noticed how Ayana treated the animals. She moved among them with a calm confidence, tending to the horses, feeding the chickens, and checking on the cattle with care. Emily watched closely, learning from Ayana's example. Jack realized that Ayana was teaching them both more than just practical skills. She was teaching respect, responsibility, and the value of gentle strength. Her knowledge of the land, the animals, and life itself made her more than a nanny. She was a teacher, a guide, and a steady presence that they both needed. There were times when Jack's worries still crept back. Storms would roll across the hills, or Emily would fall and scrape her knee, or a cow would go missing in the pasture. But Ayana faced each challenge with a calm and steady hand, guiding Jack and helping Emily feel safe. He began to understand that strength did not always mean force or control. It often meant patience, wisdom, and the ability to remain calm in difficult situations. Ayana embodied this lesson in everything she did, and Jack found himself learning from her every day. By the end of the second month, Jack could no longer imagine life without Ayana. She had become part of the household, part of Emily's life, and part of his own. She did not try to replace the love of Emily's mother, nor did she claim to. Instead, she provided a steady presence, guidance, and care that allowed them both to heal and grow. Jack realized that the journey of the past 6 months, the endless searches, the disappointments, the sleepless nights, had led them to this moment. Ayana had arrived not just as a nanny, but as a guiding light in their lives. One evening, as Jack watched Emily playing happily on the floor with Ayana, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He knew that the past 6 months had been difficult and that challenges would continue to arise. But he also knew that with Ayana by their side, they could face whatever came their way. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel hope. Not a fleeting hope, but a steady, enduring hope that life could be better, that Emily could grow up surrounded by love and care, and that he could find balance in the life he had chosen. Ayana's presence had changed everything. She had not only cared for Emily, but had also touched Jack's heart in ways he could not yet fully understand. Her arrival had been quiet, understated, and simple, but its impact was profound. Jack realized that life, with all its hardships and struggles, had a way of leading people to exactly where they were meant to be. And for him and Emily, that place was here, with Ayana beside them, guiding, teaching, and caring, as the sun set slowly over the wide, golden hills of the ranch. The days on the ranch settled into a steady rhythm, though each one carried its own surprises and challenges. Jack woke before dawn as usual to tend the animals, but now he did so with a little more peace in his heart. Emily would often wake up shortly after, and Ayana would already be moving quietly through the house, preparing a warm breakfast or gently humming a song as she set things in order. Jack watched them together, marveling at the bond that had formed so quickly between his daughter and this strong, quiet woman. Ayana's influence extended beyond Emily's care. She began teaching Jack small things he had overlooked in his daily work on the ranch. She showed him how to notice subtle signs in the animals when something was wrong, how a horse's ears or a cow's posture could tell a story. She explained how to prepare the land better for grazing, how to check fences carefully to prevent the animals from wandering, and even how to conserve water in the hot summer months. Jack listened carefully, realizing that every piece of advice came not just from experience, but from a deep understanding of life and nature. Even small victories, a fence repaired without error, a calf safely delivered, a healthy meal prepared, felt significant. He began to understand that life's challenges, though sometimes overwhelming, could be faced successfully with the right guidance and support. Emily, meanwhile, flourished under Ayana's care. She learned to say simple words clearly, to recognize the animals by their names, and to explore the ranch safely. Ayana encouraged her curiosity, letting her touch the leaves, watch the birds, and explore the creek with careful supervision. Jack was amazed at how quickly Emily's world had expanded. She was no longer confined to the house or the porch. She was exploring, learning, and growing, all under Ayana's watchful and nurturing eye. Jack also saw the importance of Ayana's influence in his own parenting. He had been doing everything alone before, trying to be both father and mother, and often failing because he was exhausted or unsure. But Ayana's presence gave him confidence. She never criticized him harshly. Instead, she offered gentle suggestions and guided him when he needed help. Over time, he began to see himself not just as a man struggling alone, but as a capable father, supported by someone he could trust. Death to the turncoat! One afternoon, as a storm approached from the hills, Jack found himself worrying about Emily. The wind picked up and dark clouds gathered overhead. He was unsure how to protect the animals and care for his daughter at the same time. Ayana noticed his concern and placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "We face it together," she said simply. And together they moved quickly, securing the animals, checking the fences, and comforting Emily when the first drops of rain fell. Jack realized that her presence had transformed fear into action. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable now felt manageable because they faced them together. As the storm passed and the sun broke through the clouds, Jack stood beside Ayana, watching Emily play in the puddles, laughing and carefree. He could feel the gratitude welling up inside him. He realized that the 6 months of searching, the endless disappointment and worry had led them to this moment. Ayana was more than a nanny. She was a guide, a teacher, and a steady anchor for both him and Emily. The bond between the three of them had grown stronger with every passing day, rooted in trust, patience, and mutual respect. Jack also began to appreciate the deeper lessons Ayana brought to their lives. He learned that care was more than completing tasks. It was understanding the needs of another, anticipating problems, and offering support quietly and consistently. He learned that patience was not weakness but a strength that allowed him to respond thoughtfully. And he learned that hope, even when it seemed impossible, could arrive in the most unexpected form, through a stranger who became family. By the end of the 3rd month, life on the ranch had changed in subtle but profound ways. Jack's home was filled with laughter, learning, and gentle guidance. Emily had grown stronger, more confident, and more curious about the world around her. Jack himself felt more capable, more peaceful, and more connected to the life he had chosen. And through it all, Ayana remained a steady presence, guiding, teaching, and caring with a quiet strength that inspired both father and daughter. Jack often caught himself watching the two of them. The way Emily reached for Ayana when she was scared. The way Ayana guided Emily's tiny hands as she learned to feed the chickens. The way Emily's laughter filled the air while Ayana smiled calmly. It was a scene of harmony and balance, something Jack had longed for during the difficult months after his wife's death. He realized that Ayana had brought more than help. She had brought hope, wisdom, and a sense of family that he had feared lost forever. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Jack, Emily, and Ayana sat together on the porch watching the sunset. The ranch, with its rolling hills and open fields, seemed peaceful in a way it had never been before. Jack felt a deep sense of gratitude knowing that life had brought them together for a reason. The months of searching and struggle had led to this moment, and he knew that, together, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Ayana's presence had changed everything. She had not only cared for Emily, but had also touched Jack's heart in ways he had never expected. Her calm strength, her wisdom, and her gentle guidance had brought balance and hope to their lives. Jack understood that life was rarely simple, but with patience, trust, and support it could also be rich, meaningful, and full of joy. And as Emily laughed and clapped her hands, reaching for the stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky, Jack realized that, finally, their family was beginning to feel whole again. Life on the ranch had grown steadier over the past months, yet the calm was often only a quiet pause before challenges arose. Jack had come to rely on Ayana more than he realized, not only for Emily's care but for guidance in the many tasks that came with running a ranch. Ayana's presence had transformed the household, bringing calm, wisdom, and a sense of routine that Jack had never thought possible on his own. But life on a ranch was never completely predictable, and one day that unpredictability arrived in the form of a sudden fierce storm. It began in the late morning with a faint rumble on the horizon. Jack was tending to the livestock when he noticed the dark clouds gathering quickly over the hills. The wind shifted, whipping dust and leaves across the ground. Emily was inside, playing near the fireplace with Ayanna, who had a calm expression despite the sky's ominous change. Jack felt the familiar tug of worry in his chest. He knew that storms could be dangerous for the animals and the ranch structures, and with Emily to care for, he felt a sudden pressure he could barely describe. He ran to the house, shouting to Ayanna, "The storm's coming fast! We need to get everything ready!" Ayanna nodded immediately, her movements quick but controlled. She picked up Emily, holding her close, and together they began securing items inside the house. Jack ran outside to check the fences, tie down loose equipment, and bring the animals into shelter. The wind howled, and the first drops of rain fell hard against the roof and windows. Jack realized that this storm was unlike any they had faced in months. It was stronger, faster, and more dangerous. Ayanna's calmness in the face of the chaos surprised Jack. She did not panic. She instructed him where to tie the animals, how to cover the feed, and how to make the barn safer against the gusts of wind. "Keep Emily inside," she said firmly. "She needs to feel safe. We cannot protect her if we are panicked." Jack followed her instructions, amazed at how she could remain so composed while the storm raged around them. He had spent countless months alone worrying, trying to do everything by himself, but now he understood the value of having someone who could think clearly under pressure. As the storm reached its peak, the rain poured down in sheets and the wind bent trees nearly to the ground. Lightning flashed across the sky and thunder boomed like a drum in the hills. Emily began to cry, frightened by the noise. Ayanna moved swiftly, holding her close, rocking her gently, and speaking softly in words Jack could not understand. The baby's crying slowly eased into small hiccups, then silence, and finally the soft sound of breathing as she relaxed into Ayanna's arms. Jack watched, silently grateful, realizing that her skill and presence were saving not only Emily's comfort but their peace of mind. After securing the animals and checking the fences, Jack returned inside to see Ayanna and Emily. She had laid out a small blanket on the floor, and Emily was sitting quietly, still clutching a small toy. Ayanna smiled at Jack. "She is frightened, yes," she said softly. "But she knows she is safe. That is what matters." Jack nodded, feeling the truth of her words. He had been so focused on the physical tasks of the ranch that he sometimes overlooked the emotional needs of Emily and of himself. Ayanna reminded him that caring for life meant more than fixing fences or feeding animals. It meant providing comfort, safety, and reassurance, even in the storm's chaos. As the afternoon progressed, the storm continued to batter the ranch. A tree fell near the edge of the pasture, narrowly missing a small herd of cattle. Jack and Ayanna worked together, guiding the frightened animals to a safer area. The wind and rain made every step difficult, but Ayanna's calm presence and steady instructions kept Jack focused. He realized that in moments like these, trust was not just a feeling, it was a necessity. He trusted her judgment, her experience, and her ability to act quickly and correctly, and that trust allowed him to work effectively under pressure. By evening, the storm began to pass. The rain lessened, the wind softened, and the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a soft golden light across the wet fields. Jack was exhausted, soaked to the bone, and aching from hours of hard labor. Emily had fallen asleep in Ayanna's arms, lulled by the storm's passing and her caretaker's comforting presence. Jack looked around at the ranch, the trees bent but standing, the animals safe, the fences still holding, and felt a quiet relief wash over him. Though the storm had tested them, they had survived it together. That night, as the house settled into calm once more, Jack sat with Ayanna by the fireplace, drying his clothes and warming his hands. Emily slept peacefully in her crib, the storm now only a memory. Jack spoke softly, almost to himself. "I don't know what I would have done without you today." "I would have been lost." Ayanna looked at him, her dark eyes steady and kind. "You would not have been lost," she replied. "You would have done what you could. But together, we are stronger. We can protect her and the ranch because we work as one."
Jack felt the weight of her words sink in.
She was teaching him something deeper than chores or childcare. She was teaching him the strength of partnership, trust, and calm determination. In the days that followed, Jack noticed subtle changes in himself and Emily. He approached tasks with more patience, thought more carefully before acting, and spoke more gently to his daughter. Emily seemed to sense the new rhythm as well. She explored the ranch with curiosity, learned from both Jack and Ayanna, and began showing a confidence that had been absent before. The storm, though frightening, had revealed strengths in all three of them that they might never have discovered otherwise. Ayanna also began teaching Emily small practical skills in ways that were gentle and playful. She showed her how to scoop water from the stream safely, how to recognize edible plants, and how to observe the clouds and animals for signs of changing weather. Emily loved these lessons, giggling and repeating words as she learned. Jack watched with pride, realizing that his daughter was growing up in a world full of life, learning, and love. He could not have imagined a better teacher or guide for her. But it was not just Emily who learned from Ayanna. Jack found himself growing in unexpected ways as well. He had always prided himself on his strength and independence, but he realized that true strength sometimes came from knowing when to accept help, when to trust another, and when to remain calm in the face of challenges. Ayanna's presence had taught him to balance courage with patience, action with reflection, and worry with faith. He could see how this lesson extended beyond the ranch. It was a lesson for life. One afternoon, a few weeks after the storm, Jack and Ayanna were walking along the pasture, checking on the animals. The sun was warm, and the fields were lush with new grass after the rain. Emily ran ahead, laughing and chasing butterflies. Jack glanced at Ayanna, feeling a quiet gratitude for everything she had done. "I never thought someone could come into our lives and change so much," he said softly. Ayanna smiled gently. "Life is full of unexpected gifts," she replied. "We cannot always choose them, but we can welcome them and make the most of what we are given." Jack nodded, understanding fully the truth in her words. As the months passed, Jack, Ayanna, and Emily continued to grow closer. They faced challenges together. Sudden illnesses, broken fences, unpredictable weather, but each challenge only strengthened their bond. Jack realized that the ranch was no longer just a place of work, it had become a place of learning, connection, and love. Ayanna's wisdom, patience, and care had transformed it into a home not only for Emily but for himself as well. By the end of Part 4, Jack no longer viewed life on the ranch as a series of solitary struggles. He understood that with Ayanna by his side, they could face anything. The storm had been a test, but it had also been a revelation. That family was not only defined by blood, but by trust, care, and shared experiences. Emily was thriving, Jack was growing stronger, and Ayanna's quiet strength had woven them together in a way that was unbreakable. Life would continue to bring challenges, but together they were ready to face them, knowing that love, patience, and guidance could overcome even the harshest storms. Life on the ranch had settled into a steady rhythm, but it was no longer the restless, anxious existence it had been when Jack first began searching for help. The days were full, yes, with chores, animal care, and tending the land, but now there was a quiet harmony in the household. Jack had learned to balance work with parenting. Emily had grown more confident and lively, and Ayanna's presence had become an invisible but essential thread connecting them all. It was a life shaped by patience, trust, and steady effort, but also by love, quiet and strong. One bright morning, Jack awoke to the soft sounds of Emily's laughter. He opened his eyes to see her in the yard, chasing a small butterfly while Ayanna walked behind her, keeping a careful watch. The little girl's joyful shouts echoed across the ranch, filling the wide-open spaces with a sound Jack had longed for since his wife's passing. He leaned against the doorway for a moment, watching them. A wave of gratitude washed over him. The past months, the endless searching, the worry, the sleepless nights, had led to this. Emily was happy, growing and thriving under Ayanna's guidance, and he finally felt that sense of peace he had yearned for. Ayanna noticed Jack watching and smiled gently. "She is learning about the world," she said softly, her voice calm and steady. "And she is learning that she is safe." "That is what matters most." Jack nodded, understanding more than words could express. It was not only Emily who had grown. He had changed as well. He had learned patience, humility, and the quiet strength that comes from trusting another person. Ayanna had not only cared for Emily, she had helped him find balance in his life again. The day was busy as always, but the rhythm of their work felt different now. Emily helped in small ways, picking up tools or carrying vegetables from the garden, her tiny hands steady as she followed Ayanna's guidance. Jack smiled at the sight, realizing that Emily was learning lessons that went far beyond chores. She was learning responsibility, care for the land and animals, and, perhaps most importantly, how to trust and connect with others. These lessons would shape her life, and Jack was grateful that she had Ayanna to guide her. Evenings on the ranch had taken on a peaceful routine. After chores were done and the animals were secured, Jack, Ayanna, and Emily would gather on the porch. Emily would play with her toys or simply watch the sky as the sun dipped behind the hills. Ayanna would share stories, tales of her heritage, of the land and of life in ways Jack had never considered. Jack would listen quietly, sometimes offering stories of his own past, sometimes simply sitting in reflection. The warmth and stability that now filled the home were a stark contrast to the anxiety and exhaustion that had marked the previous months. Jack began to see the impact of Ayanna's care in subtle ways throughout the day. Emily had developed a curiosity that extended beyond play. She asked questions about the animals, the plants, and the clouds. She observed the stars at night and learned to identify the constellations Ayanna showed her. Jack found himself inspired by Emily's wonder and by the gentle encouragement Ayanna provided. He realized that this was what he had been searching for all along. Not just someone to care for Emily, but someone who could nurture her spirit and guide her toward understanding and confidence. A significant change came when Jack allowed himself to take time away from the ranch. For months he had felt that leaving Emily even briefly was impossible, that no one could care for her as he could. But Ayanna had earned his trust fully. One afternoon he left the ranch for a few hours to handle errands in the nearby town, and when he returned, Emily ran to him, laughing and full of life, while Ayanna smiled from the doorway. The scene filled Jack with a mixture of relief and awe. Not only had she cared for Emily flawlessly, but she had also created an environment where the child thrived even in his absence. That moment crystallized for him the depth of her importance in their lives. Seasons changed on the ranch, bringing challenges, joys, and lessons. Winter brought snow and bitter winds, which required extra care for the animals and the land. Spring brought new life. Calves were born, flowers bloomed, and the fields came alive with vibrant green. Through it all, Ayanna's guidance remained steady, teaching Jack and Emily to adapt to each change. She encouraged them to observe, to listen, and to understand that every season held lessons. Emily learned to respect nature and its rhythms, absorbing knowledge that could not be found in any book. Jack also noticed the bond between Emily and Ayanna deepen in ways that warmed his heart. Emily would run to Ayanna when excited, take comfort in her arms when afraid, and mimic her gestures and words as she learned. The child's laughter and curiosity were bound to Ayanna's steady presence, forming a connection that was nurturing, patient, and filled with love. Jack realized that Emily had found not only a teacher but also a role model, someone who embodied kindness, wisdom, and quiet strength. One afternoon, Jack and Ayanna stood together on a hill overlooking the ranch. Emily ran ahead to explore a patch of wildflowers, and Jack watched her with pride. "I never thought life could feel this full again," he said quietly. And in that moment he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family, with love, patience, and unwavering trust guiding their way.